Chair, I'm concerned briefly by two things that I think Mr. Gigaba sometimes is too elaborate in his answers, and you don't get to know what he is saying at the end of an elaborate answers. I would request that his responses do not become unnecessarily elaborate so that we get to the point clearly. But I'm concerned that last week, after the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, he did a press conference. He called a press conference where he said that Atul and AJ Gupta says those fellows are not citizens of South Africa. And immediately the next day, the DG of Home Affairs said that not only one of them is not a citizen. And when we were supposed to come and appear in Parliament, he got sick. We are happy that he recovered quickly from his sickness and now will be able to respond to questions. Do you know if AJ Gupta has got a passport, South African passport or not?
Honorable Shivambu, thank you very much for your background and your question. Mr. AJ Gupta is a permanent residence holder. The Department of Home Affairs does not issue passports to permanent residence holders. If it has, we would have to investigate how that happened. I have already instructed the department to consider revoking his permanent residence permit in light of the allegations which have been leveled at him. And if he is found to be holding a South African passport, we would investigate how that happened, because as a permanent residence holder, he's not supposed to be in possession of a South African passport.
You know, immediately when you were, after the press conference, when you were speaking about their citizenship, in social media which you have got access to, which your office has got access to, there was an authentic passport copy of AJ Gupta, which I'm sure you have seen, and that is part of public documents that were submitted to a court process which involved the Financial Intelligence Center. So I'm sure you know that he has got a passport. And how long would it take to verify if he has got a passport or not? Does it need a long investigation to know whether he has got a passport or not?
The honorable member is confusing Atul Kumar Gupta with AJ
I'm
Kumar.
not. There is a passport reflection of Atul Gupta and of AJ Gupta as well.
The passport that was circulating in the
do you want me to show you that?
Yes.
Yes.
May I request
because you are saying I'm confused, and I can show you the evidence of the reflection of passport of AJ Gupta. You want me to show you that now?
Okay. No. Let's drink. Take a sip of water, and allow each other to respond. I'm allowing you now, Minister, to respond as a witness. Thank you.
Thank you. The passport that was circulating in social media was of Atul Kumar Gupta that was issued in 2015.
So you do not know yet whether AJ Gupta has got a South African passport or not?
Well, the honorable member chair just said that it was Ajay Gupta's passport. So if he is aware of an Ajay Gupta passport, we would like to get a copy of that and get a source of where the honorable member got it, because from social media you can electronically generate anything. There is a document, there is a death certificate that is circulating on social media of somebody who died of poloni. That death certificate is obviously not authentic, but it's been technologically generated.
That's fine. There's an issue which you say you're taking offense to. What is offensive when people ask you of your nationality? Like, it happens every day when we apply for visa, when we travel, people always ask us of our nationalities. where were you born, even the visa application even specify where was your father born. What is offensive about that? Isn't it an opportunity for you to clarify where you were born and where your father was born? What is offensive about that?
What is offensive about it, Honorable Chairperson, is that I know for a fact that the source of the question is as malicious as the extensive vilification campaign to which I have been subjected for political reasons over many, many months. All of that vilification has been malicious, and this question itself is malicious. And it would be fine if the honorable member started by telling me who they are and then explain to me what their concerns are before they ask me who am I. The honorable member has known me for a very long time. This issue has never arisen. Why does it arise now? As I say, the only reason why it arises now is because the honorable member is part of a massive vilification machinery that is directed at me personally for political reasons.
Just to rest the case, so the person who asked you that question is a member of the EFF, a member of parliament, because there are allegations that you might not be of South African origin and or either your family. So that has to be clarified before we move on it, and it must come from you.
No. We can't allow a situation where a person will be directly attacked.
It's not attack,
no, Honorable Shivambu. Honorable Malusi Gigaba is a minister in the Republic of South Africa. Therefore, he is a member of parliament in the Republic of South Africa. He is having an ID, not a green ID, an ID of the Republic of South Africa. You can't ask him that personal questions live on TV. That he must ask. I think those personal questions can go privately. We are now dealing with the Eskom issues here. No, I cannot allow that to happen. No, it's too. You are becoming too personal. No, you are becoming too personal. No, member, you can't ask those questions.
Where were you born? Where was your mother born?
No, why?
Those are
personal questions. Why are you asking a person where is your mother born? Where is your mother born?
My mother was born in Malusi. So I can be able to clarify that. I'm not even offended about it.
It's not going to help us.
I'm not offended about it.
It's not going to help us going forward to making a report of this committee. No, I cannot allow that to happen. No. Ask the questions that are relevant to the subject matter of Eskom inquiry and Dinel and other relevant issue, not a personal matter. I cannot allow that.
That's fine.
It is wrong.
Chair. That's okay, Chair. When did you first meet the Guptas outside of the Diwali events that they invited you to? When did you meet them? Let me actually give you a clearer context. So, any of the Gupta criminal syndicates, Atul Gupta, Tony Gupta, AJ Gupta, Salim Issa, Nazim Hoa, Eric Wood, and all of those people that are surrounding the Gupta criminal syndicate, when did you first get to engage? Iqbal Sharma, when did you get to meet any of those people for the first time before the engagements in the Diwali activities?
I cannot recall the exact date, Honorable Member. It's many years ago. I've not interacted with them for quite a long time as well. So I cannot recall the exact dates for meeting any one of them for the first time. Yeah.
So except for the Diwali, have you been to their private residence to talk about any issue private or that relates to the department or ministries that we're leading?
No.
You have never been to the...
I've never been to discuss any of the government-related activities.
But have you been there for private purposes outside of the Diwali ones that you have owned up to here?
I've been there for those purposes.
Only for Diwali? Do you know how many times have you been there?
Several times. I mean, it was a few Diwali celebrations and I stopped afterwards.
What would several times get to mean, Mr. Gigaba?
Look, anything between 2 and 3. But after that, I stopped.
So if someone were to say that you have been to the Gupta compound more than 5 times, you would say you have not done that?
Well, they would have calculated. If that's what you want to say, you would have to provide evidence, obviously.
Your recollection only reminds you of the 2 or 3 times.
It reminds me, yeah, of those several times.
Can you please get me a clear number? How many times did you go to the Gupta compound? Is it two times or 3 times or 5 times or 10 times?
As I say, Honorable Member, I do not recall. I was not calculating.
Would you be able to give us the exact number if we were to allow you space to recall how many times you have been to the Gupta compound?
It would not have been official, so it is not in my diary. Therefore, I cannot go back to my diary to recollect.
But aren't you now creating a space that when we give you evidence that you've been there several times, like 7 times or 8 times, you will say, well, I've opened it up and everything else. I'm sure in the next 5 years you would recall that I've been there 2 or 3 times. Can you give us an approximate number?
Honorable Member, you would be speculating.
So what is your speculation? How many times approximately? 20 times?
Talking about you would be speculating, not me. I've already answered the question.
How many times have you been
I've
to the
already
Gupta
answered
compound?
the question.
Is it between 2 and 5 times?
I've answered the question.
Or is it between 5 and 10 times, or is it between 10 and 15 times?
I've answered the question, Chair.
So you do not want to give us the number of times that you have visited the Gupta criminal compound?
As I say, Honorable Member, it was not in my official diary. Therefore, I would not be able to say to you how many times, because my official diary is the one that can indicate how many times.
And your memory is not serving you well to remember how many times you've been there as well?
I meet a lot of people. I go to meet a lot of people all around the country for a variety of reasons. When it comes to social events, I do not make the effort to calculate and to record them.
When was the last time you went to Dubai, and how many times have you been to Dubai in the past period when you were the Minister of Public Enterprises and of Home Affairs? That includes private visits and public visits. How many times have you been to Dubai?
I would have to find that information and bring it to you.
So
but I can confirm to you it had nothing to do with the Guptas. I've never been invited to Dubai by them. I've never been hosted by them. It was either on official business or I think once on personal business, and that's it.
So you do not know how many times you've been to Dubai as well?
No, as I say, when it comes to the official business, I will have to go back and check, and I can provide that information to the committee. And when it comes to personal times, I think I was there once in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And then but in all those instances, I was not invited by them. I was not hosted by them.
So before you appointed Salim Issa to the board of Infraco Broadband, where had you met him before?
As I say, Honorable Chairperson, when we appoint members of the board, you do not have to meet them first. The Honorable Member would be better advised. Members of the board, if you appoint anybody onto a board of any state-owned company, you don't have to have a meeting with them first before you can meet with them. I mean, before you can appoint them.
Do you have a bank account in Dubai, in any of the banks in Dubai?
It's part of the vilification campaign of which the Honorable Member is part of an active machinery. I do not have a bank.
Don't make
I do not have
accusations. We're asking a question. You can say no or yes. Do you have an account in Dubai or not?
I do not have an account in Dubai. I never have. I never will. I only have one account. It's with FNB, Honorable Member.
You say that you disapproved of the sponsorship of Eskom to the New Age breakfast show. Is that the case? Did you disapprove of that?
Of what?
Of the New Age breakfast show. Did you disapprove of it?
Yes, I did. I expressed very deep concerns, and I wrote a letter to state-owned companies to that effect.
Are you aware that ministries were paying the New Age breakfast show anything between 200,000 and R1 million to appear in the New Age breakfast show in SABC? Are you aware of that? I know, let me just give you an example that COCTA paid 486,000. The Department of Communications under Faith Mutambi paid about 958,000. Are you aware that ministries and ministers were paying to appear on the Gupta television platform? Well, platform which they had created.
Unfortunately, those ministers did not submit those reports to me.
But when we appeared there on the 24th of April 2014, you paid, the Ministry of Public Enterprises paid 213,000 for your appearance in that platform. Are you aware of that?
The department would have paid, but I would need to find that information and furnish it.
No, but we asked you a question officially as the EFF, and you responded as a minister to say that I can confirm that that is what the response says. I appeared on a Gupta, the New Age breakfast show, and 213,000 was paid for that appearance. That is what you responded. You forgot about that.
The honorable member would be better advised to remember that when I was invited to appear before the committee, that was not one of the questions. I would have found the information and presented that information to the committee.
Do you have additional income outside of what you are paid by Parliament or by government as a member of the executive? Do you have any additional income that you get from anywhere else?
The honorable member would be better advised to read the forms of my declarations every year, both the ones I do as the minister and the ones I submit as a member of Parliament.
So outside of those declarations, you do not have any other form of income?
Sure, if the honorable member has read my declarations, he would know the answer to the question he's asking.
I'm asking this, Mr. Gigaba, because the sections that you saw oath to at the beginning, sections 16 and 17 of the Powers and Privileges Act, will classify non-disclosure of those as a criminal offense, which has got a prison sentence at the end of that. Do you have additional income outside of what you have declared in the members' interest here in Parliament and in terms of the ministerial handbook?
Chairperson, I invite the member to make his allegations.
I've asked the question. I want you to answer. You can be able to
I've answered you.
And then in your oversight of the state-owned companies, have you ever subjected any of the state-owned companies to what is required by Section 54(2) of the Public Finance Management Act? You spoke about Section 54 of the PFMA. Have you ever subjected any transaction to that process? Because it places certain obligations on the executive authority, which in the definition are cabinet ministers. Have you ever subjected? I can read it for you. It says that before a public entity concludes any of the following transactions, the accounting authority for the public entity must promptly and in a written form, in writing, inform the relevant treasury of the transaction and submit relevant particulars of the transaction to its executive authority for approval of the transaction. And the definition of the executive authority in the PFMA, in the definition sections, it says that in relation to national departments, the executive authority means the cabinet member who is accountable to Parliament for that particular department. Have you ever subjected any of the state-owned companies to Section 54(2) when they were engaged in any of the major transactions when you were the Minister of Public Enterprises?
As the honorable member correctly quotes Section 54(2), you are required, when a Section 54 application is signed, the Minister of Finance must also concur.
I'm asking that when you were a Minister of Public Enterprises, have you ever got a request to utilize that section to approve any of the transactions that were being conducted, any of the tenders that are being conducted by Transnet, by Eskom, by any of the entities under the Department of Public Enterprises? Because it says that it's you who must give approval for some of the transactions that are listed there, like, which includes acquisition or disposal of significant shareholding, acquisition or disposal of a significant asset. Have you ever been sought to provide approval for any of those transactions that are listed in the PFMA?
Whenever we had to do any of these, we comply with the letter of the law.
I'm not asking whether you have complied with the law or not. I'm asking whether you have done it.
But if it has had to be done, I mean, the honorable member is asking me to remember if there were any disposal of significant assets or acquisition and so on. In the course of many submissions that the state-owned companies provide, the department would make necessary arrangements for, in the instance where the Minister of Finance must concur, for submissions to also be referred to the Minister of Finance for concurrence. The same would have applied when I was Minister of Finance, that submissions would also come to me for concurrence.
I think you're going back to those elaborate answers that do not give a clearer context. Do you agree that that list of issues that are in that section 54(2) A to F, those transactions will require tenders sometimes to conclude? Do you agree that will be the way to handle them?
That's what section 54(2) says.
So why were you being emotive when you said that ministers must not get involved in tenders? I advise ministers not to get involved in tenders when the law says that you must get involved.
Honorable member,
yes.
You are deliberately misreading what this requires. This does not require ministers to be involved in tenders.
But what does
this
approval
is a section,
mean?
Honorable Chair, this is a section 54 application.
Yes.
It does not require ministers to be involved in the nitty-gritty of the applications. When a company writes to a minister and says, Minister, we require or we request your approval to either acquire or dispose of certain shares. That doesn't, when the minister approves that, it doesn't mean the minister is being involved in the tenders themselves. The minister is approving in principle the application. The actual conducting of the entire transaction is conducted by the state-owned company itself, not the minister.
It's not a deliberate misreading, Mr. Gigaba. You are the one who misunderstands what that law says. It says that a minister must approve, and certain approvals, like if Transnet, for instance, is going to buy locomotives for 38 billion rands, it says that the minister concerned must be the one that ultimately approves, because that is a major acquisition. That's what the law says.
I can show the honorable member the section 54 approval which I signed for Transnet. It did not deal with who is bidding, who is winning the bid. It didn't deal with all of that. It provides for minister to give a broad-based, in principle approval for the transaction to take place. It takes place prior to the bidding process. The minister does not get involved. No minister gets involved in any of the transactions that state-owned companies involve themselves in.
Well, I think that is your own narrow reading of the law.
It's your own narrow reading, it's your own manipulative reading.
In terms of how the whole situation is. What did you do to end the evergreen contracts that Eskom had? What were the policy directives that you gave that the people who have been supplying coal to Eskom should not do in the manner that they've been doing? What was your contribution in that regard?
I was spearheading the establishment of a policy intervention, the emerging miner strategy, which would have resulted in the ending of those evergreen contracts.
So you were still brainstorming?
I was not brainstorming, I was spearheading the process. We
what does
engaged in extensive
what exactly did you do? What exactly did you do? What are the tangible things that...
I just answered that question.
What is spearheading? Did you call a conference? Did you write a policy? Did you call the state-owned companies and say that this is what must happen, this is what must not happen? What have you done?
I explained this question earlier. The honorable member chose deliberately either not to listen or to listen selectively. I explained, Honorable Chair, that we worked with the board to establish the emerging miner strategy, which had 5 pillars. It was quite an extensive strategy. And one of the objectives was that by 2018-19, 50% plus 1 of coal supply contracts to Eskom must be provided by black miners in South Africa, by black emerging miners in South Africa. And part of the consultation processes, which involved extensive meetings with the board, also involved 2 broad consultative meetings with stakeholders in the emerging mining sector. And we agreed with them on an approach we were going to take, and they were supportive of the policy proposals that we were creating. And that is when we also began discussions with Alexco and between Alexco and Eskom to diversify Alexco's asset base to also involve not only diamond mining, but to also involve coal mining, so that we use Alexco to leverage for the involvement of black miners in the coal supply
That's
program.
Fine. Maybe to avoid again a whole elaborate answer, can we get a written submission on what you say you did in terms of ending the evergreen contracts, and then we'll take it from there. I want to move to the next question.
I realize, Chair, that extensive responses irritate the honorable member.
The advocate Vusi Piccoli wrote in his book that you instructed SNG, which is Season Zaluba Gobodo, that they must remove him from one of their entities or subsidiaries, so that SNG could be able to gain access to government tenders, particularly state-owned companies. Is that the case?
I rejected that allegation back then, and I still reject it now.
That's fine. We'll deal with that as a separate process. And then when Brian Molefe was first appointed as the CEO of Transnet, you were the Minister of Public Enterprises.
Yes.
Was there a cabinet memo that was drafted which involved the Transnet board on who must be appointed out of the people that were interviewed by the Transnet board for the position of CEO of Transnet?
Yes, there was a board memo.
And which other names were in that memo?
I cannot recall which other names were on the memo.
But you recall that there was definitely a board memorandum?
Of course.
Okay, that's fine. We'll make a follow-up about that. I want to now deal with the recent issues. When you were a Minister of Finance, Public Enterprises under Lynn Brown appointed a board in December last year of Eskom, which was chaired by Zitembe Khoza. Were you in a cabinet meeting that approved such appointment of the board?
Yes, as I said so earlier.
And what did you say when that board was being recommended?
As I did say earlier, I expressed my views. I still express right now my discomfort at disclosing my own individual opinions out of a cabinet meeting, because cabinet discussions are confidential. But nonetheless, I did express my views that I thought someone else should have been appointed as the chairperson of the board.
Do you know the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Mahashul, every time he speaks about the Guptas, he says they are honest business people, South Africans who must be respected as such. Do you share the view of the SG of the ANC?
Well, you are quoting the SG of the ANC. That certainly is not what you have heard me say.
No, but I'm asking for your views. What do you think of the Guptas? Do you think they are a problem or they are adding value to South Africa's business development and transformation and what we seek to achieve as a country?
Certainly do not think so.
What is your view of these allegations of corruption and malpractice and wrongdoings around them? What do you think? What is your view as a person who used to visit them, Diwali, even went to their weddings and everything? What do you think of them?
I am on record as saying that allegations of state capture must be investigated. I have hailed the establishment of the commission and the announcement of the terms of reference, and I am on record earlier today as welcoming the work of this committee and declaring my full cooperation with the committee.
Are you aware that Iqbal Sharma has got some relations with the Guptas?
I am now aware of it.
When did you become aware of that?
It became when everybody else became aware of it. At the time when I appointed him, neither me nor the Department of Trade and Industry, the very many ministers who had appointed him as DDG, were aware of his links with the Guptas.
And Salim Issa is the same?
It's the same, yes.
The current board of Eskom, you issued the joint statement with the Minister of Public Enterprises. How was it constituted? Who brought the names that ultimately formed part of the current board of Eskom?
It was a joint process of the National Treasury and the Department of Public Enterprises.
Do you know which names came from where?
The officials in the department worked on the names, they presented it to the ministers, we looked at them, we decided on who to recommend to the principals.
Do you know who submitted the name of Sifiso Dabengwa?
It certainly was not President Ramaphosa. The name
I've never asked you about that. I'm
preempting you. I'm preempting you.
But don't
the
do
name.
That. You must
yeah,
listen
I'm
to the
preempting.
questions
I'm helping you.
To them.
I'm helping you. The name came from the process of the consultation of the two departments.
You know, Mr. Gigaba, when you're asked questions, don't try to act cleverer. You must listen.
Neither should you try to act cleverer when you ask questions.
You must listen to
the facts must not irritate
respond to what you're being asked and not jump over what you've not been asked, because you're not going to give us the clearer answers.
Don't be irritated by the facts.
Yeah,
I know they are an irritation. They stand in the way of a good story.
We'll make assessment on what you have said here and your forgetfulness, which is convenient. There is an allegation that is in the public discourse about you having transported 500,000 rand to a girlfriend through an intelligence official. Is that the case?
Yeah, that's absolute rubbish. It's got nothing to do with this inquiry.
It has got nothing to do with the inquiry, but we want to link that because the allegation about, let me give you the scene quickly, is that you have got the criminal syndicate of the Guptas, with associates, most of whom have mentioned, of Salim Issa, Iqbal Sharma, Nazim Hoa, Rajesh Gupta, and all of those who utilize politicians. Amongst the prime politicians who are being utilized by the Guptas is former President Jacob Zuma, Msebenzi Zwane, it's yourself, it's Lynn.
That's an allegation that you have not proven.
Let me give you the scene. You'll speak afterwards.
It's an allegation you have
Don't jump into what I'm still giving. I'm giving you a scene.
Honorable Chair, if the member must make this allegation, he needs to do it in a form of a substantive statement.
Wait for the scene to.
Honorable
You will be
Shivambu,
able to respond.
No. I want to say to the minister, when Honorable Shivambu was starting with the issue of he said there are allegations outside there. So I think he is in he is privileged to say allegations.
Then the
Chair,
allegation.
If I may address you, Chair. He made the reference to allegations in relation to the 500,000, to which I responded and said it's absolute rubbish. He then went on to say that the Guptas used several politicians, and he mentioned me. That he did not refer to as an allegation.
Let's say it's an allegation. Can you patiently listen? Patiently listen. that you are part of, the allegation that you are part of the Gupta stooges who are given a lot of money in Dubai to go around spending on girlfriends. That's why we're asking you a question. Did you give your girlfriend 500,000 of cash money which you had generated from the Guptas? Is that the case?
There are also allegations about you, Mr.
We're asking the question about you now.
There are also allegations about you, Mr. Shivambu, to which you also would be advised to respond. I have already said, Chairperson, that these allegations are absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. There is no truth to them, no basis to those allegations. It's part of a vilification machinery in which Mr. Shivambu is actively or allegedly actively involved.
No, that's fine, Chair. Let's leave him. He is confused. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Majority of the things that he has said here do not make sense, are not believable. We'll process them at the end of the inquiry. Thank you very much.
Chairperson, I would like to address that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Shivambu and the Honorable Minister. We will process